Hello, everyone. Welcome. We are so thrilled you are joining us today and hopefully through all of November as the USC Family Caregiver Support Center celebrates you and National Family Caregiver Month with its CALM Caregivers Are Learning More conference. I'm Paulina Milana, here to guide you through all of our incredible sessions that speak to this year's theme of the art of balance. This is the 24th year that the Los Angeles Caregiver Resource Center is presenting its special suite of events, meeting family caregivers wherever you may be in your caregiver journey and helping you navigate your path with tools, education, support services, and so much more. I encourage you to explore what we have to offer by visiting our website at losangelescrc.usc.edu. You'll see it right there on the screen. Now, we held our 2024 CALM kickoff on November 1. And as we shared during that virtual event, we'll be coming to you throughout this entire month with individual sessions on a topic that has something to do with helping family caregivers find more balance in their lives. Each session includes both experts and family caregiver experts, each sharing their best practices and their real life experiences. If you haven't yet signed up for these sessions, you'll find Hi, everyone. I am going to start with technical difficulties, and we're back though, so I will take it from the top. I just want to welcome everyone to today's session. I hope you all join us throughout the entire month of November. USC's Family Caregiver Support Center celebrates you and National Family Caregiver Month with its C.A.L.M conference, Caregivers Are Learning More. I'm Paulina Milana, here to guide you through all of these incredible sessions that speak to this year's theme of the art of balance. This is the 24th year that Los Angeles Caregiver Resource Center is presenting this special suite of events, meeting family caregivers wherever you may be in your caregiver journey and helping you navigate your path with tools, education, support services, and so much more. I encourage you to explore what we have to offer by visiting our website, and you'll see the URL on the screen, losangelescrc.usc.edu. Now, we held our 2024 C.A.L.M kickoff on November 1. And as we shared during that virtual event, we'll be coming to you throughout this month with individual sessions on a topic that has something to do with helping family caregivers find more balance in their lives. And who doesn't need more balance in their lives? Each session is going to include an expert or two or three and a family caregiver or two or three. Each will share their best practices and their real life experiences. Now, if you haven't yet signed up for these sessions, you'll find the link to do so on the screen, and we'll drop it into the chat. All the sessions are free. You just need to register so that you make sure you get the appropriate link. Today's session is all about identity. And I know you're going to love what our expert Maureen Feldman, consultant and director of the Social Isolation Impact Project at the Motion Picture and Television Fund, has to share with us. I know you're also going to love meeting and hearing from our family caregiver authors, Debbie Tynan and Allison Seaton. I know you're going to have comments throughout and questions, and we encourage that. Jot them down or write them into the chat, and we'll take those all at the end. Now, one more housekeeping kind of note before we get started. The family caregivers you heard from during the kickoff session, and those from whom you'll be hearing during today's sessions and all the other sessions throughout November, each one is an author of a chapter in a book called The Caregiver Chronicles. You can see it over my left shoulder here. Now, you can get a free copy of this book by entering the Los Angeles Caregiver Resource Center's random drawing. Here's what you need to do. Go to your social media pages at any time throughout this session or any one of the sessions and post something. Invite your friends to come to any one of these sessions. Let them know some tidbit that you have heard that has been helpful, some gem from any one of these sessions. Put that in your post, tag us, and then grab a screenshot and email that screenshot to the address that you see on the screen. So that's lacrc-com@usc.edu. We will take everything that we get, we'll put it in one of those big old hats and draw from it, and people will win a free book. How awesome is that? I promise when you hear all of these stories, you're going to want it. So now, you didn't come to hear me yammer on. You came to hear our expert Maureen and our family caregiver authors. So I am going to turn it over to Maureen to start our conversation. Go ahead, Maureen.
Hi, everybody. Welcome, and thank you, Paulina. I'm glad your technical difficulties got worked out. Yeah, today we're going to talk about the whole of you, balancing identity. And yes, I work at the Motion Picture Television Fund, and I specifically work with isolated individuals, people that are aging, but also family caregivers, specifically people caring for someone with some kind of memory impairment or dementia. And I come to you not just from someone who, does this for a living, but I myself was a family caregiver for my father-in-law who had early onset Alzheimer's. This was several years ago, and I'm thrilled to say that it was the USC Caregiver Resource Center where I found help. I did not know it existed, and a friend told me to call there. And when I did, I broke down in tears just because someone understood what I was going through. So the challenges of caregiving are very complex and can be all-encompassing. So we'll talk a little bit about how you can possibly hold on to your identity and some of your mental health while you're caring for someone else when challenges arise. So next slide. So to love somebody deeply doesn't mean abandoning yourself in the process. So we often attribute something like that or a statement like that to a romantic relationship. But in reality, many of us are caring for a spouse, a sibling, or a parent, and we want to do our best, of course, and we want to give them everything that we can to keep them comfortable. But because of the responsibilities and the activities surrounding caregiving, sometimes we forget to take care of ourselves in that process. So that might be not recognizing that day-to-day activities have run into the next, and you've neglected some of your own needs. And we'll talk about that today. Self-care language can sometimes feel dismissive, almost like a cliche. The put your oxygen mask on first, but instead we're going to talk about self-care as self-compassion and self-respect, and really ways that these actions will help you see yourself as a whole person, not just a caregiver. So next slide. So I wanted to start off, I'm sure many of you are familiar with these statistics, but for those of you who are not, 65 million people right now, so that's almost 30% of the US population, are providing care to someone. And we're talking about we're not talking about paid caregivers right now, we're talking about family caregivers. Many of you are in the sandwich generation. In fact, if you're able to put that in the chat, if you're caring for young children or even teenagers at the same time, let us know. But that they call that the sandwich generation. It means you've got older parents or a spouse and children you're caring for. And then again, about 2/3 of those are caring for people with dementia, and those are mostly women. So it's the bottom numbers that we take a look at. 13 days a month on tasks like shopping and food preparation, housekeeping, laundry, transportation, and giving medication. That's not your life, doing that for your family or yourself. That's for an individual and other than yourself. 6 days per month, it adds up to all of the assistance in feeding and grooming and walking and bathing. And then, of course, going to doctor's visits, managing financial matters, or looking up things on the internet. So all of this takes time. It takes commitment, and it doesn't feel at the beginning as though it's that big of an effort. But when you've been caring for someone day after day, sometimes for months and years on end, it's easy to lose a sense of yourself, to neglect your own medical appointments or your own social connections. We're going to be talking about social connectivity throughout today because social connection is one of the strongest activities that you can do for your own mental health. So let's go to the next slide. So these are some questions we're going to talk to our caregivers about today, but ask yourself this, and if you'd like to write it in the chat, or if you have that ability to, do you feel selfish when you're prioritizing your own needs when you're caring for someone else? What does that mean? Does thinking about your own needs feel frightening? If so, why? Is it hard to ask for help or to express your needs? You have to look at, are you afraid you won't get them met? Is there no one there to meet them? These are all questions. And do I need to prove my worth to someone I'm caring for? We hear about that a lot. My parents took care of me. I want to give them the best care possible. So we're going to talk about, recognizing and understanding the stages of burnout and kind of just overwhelm, because if you don't address those, sometimes they turn into self-neglect. So let's first, before we go into all of these, I'd love to hear from our caregivers and give some of these answers, and then we'll start, digging in a little bit deeper. So let's hear from Debbie and Allison, how you two have been managing some of these feelings around taking care of yourself. Why don't you start, Debbie? Yeah.
Pardon me?
Why don't you start?
You want me to go?
Yeah.
Sure. So, hi, I'm Debbie. I take care of my soon-to-be 98-year-old mom. She has a lot of unusual challenges that have made us finding caregivers for her very difficult because they're scared to death. And I try to take care of myself, but in some ways I have surrendered so much to just letting things go because it's easier. It's very difficult to train somebody or train people. And I have tried to manage. I've started going to my own doctor appointments. I do it in the mornings when my mom's sleeping, and then run out and run back home. I don't really have a social life anymore.
Do you think you can
Doing
address
what
any
we're
of these questions? Like, do you feel selfish if you prioritize your own needs, or we understand it's hard to train someone else, but when we're
well,
talking about,
I don't know that I feel selfish. I feel irresponsible if I'm leaving her in the care of somebody who doesn't know what to do.
it's a lot.
And it's very stressful. And even right now, I think Allison probably feels the same way. We're on the clock. We're on the clock 24/7. So this is a 24/7 job. And um I'm going back and forth to my mom and if she needs something, and so and I was social with a friend this morning on the phone, which felt really good. But as I was explaining, I feel um I feel stressed out making
Mhm.
plans with people because most often I'm canceling because I'm sleep deprived.
You'd rather sleep. You'd
And
rather get to
I
sleep.
just
Mhm.
pardon me?
I said you'd rather put the time into sleep.
Well, I just don't know how I'm going to feel. I mean, if I, or if I'm going to, if I've had like this week, I think I've gone about 7 nights of maybe 3 hours of sleep.
Mm.
So I don't know how I'm going to feel if I'm going to have a good stretch.
Allison, do you feel the same way? Are you, what can you answer any of those questions up there? Do you feel selfish when prioritizing your needs, or is it hard for you to ask for help?
I don't think it's hard for me to ask for help. I think it's less about feeling selfish about prioritizing my needs and feeling like, is it gonna, affect the algorithm of our household, or is it going to tip something one way than another? Yeah, I think I don't even look at it in terms of prioritizing my own needs. I just think just even any focus on myself or the things that I need to get done. It's, the great word up there is frightening, because I'm supposed to be caring for her. And so her care feels sort of under wraps. And for whatever reason, my own care feels very out of control and very across the board. Um, and it, even though it's not, it feels like a threat to her care or a threat to how I, maybe manage things.
Well, the reason why I ask, and I'm thank you both for sharing that. There is no straight answer. There is no easy way, but caregiver burnout and caregiver depression is a real thing. And what a lot of people don't know is that people caring for another person often end up having issues, medical, mental, or physical themselves, challenges. The burnout is real. And then the risk there is desensitization to both the person that they're caring for and their own lives and their own activities. So caregiver burnout, if you're aware of it, if you realize, oh, this is a 24/7 job, and you do not have support or help or breaks, that's not very sustainable. So what we're going to try to talk about today, and everything, all the little tips you hear or the suggestions, we know they're hard, but they're really about helping you find a dual awareness. And that dual awareness is about that caring for your person, your loved one, is very important, but caring for yourself is equally as important. Because if you don't, then you will not be able to have the resilience that you need to continue on this caregiving journey. Let's go to the next slide. So, again, self-care, we can reframe that as self-compassion or, any other term that you want, but you can't really pour from an empty cup. If your bucket is empty, it's hard to put out someone else's fires. So, again, these are challenges. I'm not saying any of these are easy, but the first task is to identify what's in your way. It can be that you don't physically have another person that you can have support you. Is someone that you hire or pay to come in to help you as good as you are? Absolutely not. But is it adequate so that you can care for yourself? That's a decision. Again, valuing yourself as an individual, most caregivers don't come with a cape. We are not all Linda Carter and Wonder Women or men, but we sometimes feel that we have to be. That is not sustainable. So again, we're just looking at ways to help you, again, stay in touch with what makes you uniquely you, maybe even if it's for moments at a time. And again, not just because it makes you a better caregiver, but because you deserve it and it is right for you. Again, caregiver burnout, caregiver depression, if it goes unchecked, then often the person stops losing a sense, or they start having no sense of self, and they just feel like they are a caregiver to someone. And that statement of put your oxygen mask on first, some caregivers say, why? So that I can keep just providing care. They no longer feel human themselves. And that's where we run into a little bit of difficulty, both sustaining the caregiving, but also regaining our sense of self when the caregiving is over. Let's go to the next slide. So those of you who are caring for people with memory impairment, it's even more challenging. Those individuals often do not have the ability to thank you. They can have memory loss where they don't even relate to you as a family member, which can be heartbreaking. Some can show aggressive behavior or indifference to you completely. So looking for some meaning in small connections can sometimes help you with your emotional health. It might be simply listening to music together when someone can no longer have a conversation. Looking for joy in small gestures, looking at photographs, even sharing a show, something like Dancing with the Stars or something that you know they enjoyed that you can do together, but that might be the only form of thank you that you receive. There's also the grief of the loss of the person while they're still alive, but they may not be acting like your parent or your spouse. So it can be incredibly emotional and challenging. And without social connection of your own, without having those moments to honor your own needs, and your own well-being, it will set you on a course to not have the resilience that you need to continue moving forward. So next slide. So let's just look at this and then we'll talk a little bit again with Allison and Debbie. But so some caregivers, if they've been caring for a long time, will have an identity crisis. It's a blurred between, your responsibilities to the person you're caring for and to yourself. So focusing entirely on another person's needs and you forget your own identity can bring up guilt, anger, frustration, and confusion. So the guilt is, we always feel like we could be doing more or we should always be available with never asking for time for yourself. And when you do take time for yourself, if guilt comes up, we think that that is a true feeling. It doesn't mean that it's right, but that's what we're feeling. Anger and frustration. Some people find resentment, not just about the sacrifices they've been making, but what's coming. And especially when your own needs are neglected. And confusion. This is a very complex and challenging time to be a caregiver to someone we love. So the responsibilities are endless, and it's hard to tell where your personal boundaries are, if you can even have them. So again, one of the biggest concerns is depersonalization, a sense of detachment from both the person that you're caring for and your own life. That also leads us to feel like at the end of each day, we've not accomplished enough. And, it's just an endless cycle for some. So we're going to talk about kind of a dual awareness, how we can kind of recognize when we need a break, even if it's just for a moment, and to be able to give that to ourselves without guilt, without anger and frustration, and without confusion. Let's go to the next slide. So reframing guilt. One statement would be, I'm not doing enough, to I'm doing what I can, and my needs are as equally valid. So it's basically asking you to give yourself permission to prioritize yourself. And it's okay, you deserve it, and you need it to be a sustainable caregiver. So there's no benefit in neglecting yourself physically, mentally, emotionally, or spiritually. So Debbie and Allison, with this in mind, there is a whole list of reasons why this is challenging and hard. But let's see if we can't explore, is it possible for you to find a bit of dual awareness while caring for your moms? I think you're both caring, one's for your grandmother, one's caring for your mom, so that you're not so 24/7 exhausted and sleep isn't the only thing that you look forward to. Can you think of any ways to incorporate a dual awareness or an ideal of sustainable caregiving into your process? Again, it's not easy, but we're asking you to challenge yourself here. Either one of you. Debbie, why don't you go first?
I am mindful of trying to shift to thinking about myself. But it just, all roads lead back to just fatigue and sleep deprivation. And, it's hard. And so I use the word surrender a lot, but I find that it's so much, it's so much easier to just surrender to a lot of things, and that I just take care of what I can, which includes myself, my daughter, and my mom, and kind of, hope for the best.
You're
There's
in
a
that
lot of
sandwich generation.
correct, and there's just a lot of moving pieces all the time, and a lot of stuff that's out of my control. And where I'm just on a mission to accomplish what I need to accomplish for all of us. Sometimes I'm successful and sometimes I'm not. And when I'm not, that's just where I get back to my center, and I've just I have to allow myself to know that I did my best.
Good for you. That is a great statement. I hope that everyone listening recognizes that's exactly the right, you know, statement is I did my best. I think anyone caring for someone sets out to do that, and we can't always do everything all at the same time. We can simply do our best, or our best for right now. How do you feel about identity and, balancing yours with the identity of being a caregiver?
I don't really think about identity. Um, I just think about my mission and everything that I need to do. And, you know, make sure the house is okay and make sure that the bills are paid and I communicate to the doctors and I'm there for my daughter and um I just it's a mission. Everything is a mission. And um at night after I put my mom to bed and everything's okay, and I'm just really happy that the day was successful without any events, and then I look forward to the next day, hoping that the next day will be successful without any events.
Do you take any small regular breaks, to connect with friends or even to small little achievable things on the tough days, just to even a minor act, for yourself can be profound and help you, reclaim pieces of who you were before you were a caregiver. Do you allow any time for that?
Um, I probably would more if I wasn't so sleep deprived.
Ah, okay.
Um, like right now, I'm exhausted. I haven't really, had more than about 3 hours of sleep in the last per night in the last week.
Mhm.
I'm
Yeah.
tired,
Mhm.
so um, I'm just happy that I'm not making any mistakes.
Okay. Allison, what about you?
Yes, I mean, I couldn't agree more with everything Debbie is saying. I also think mission is a great word. It's mission impossible. 1, 2, and 3, like on the daily. Maureen, I didn't grab the question. Could you tell me the question
Oh,
again?
yes, yeah. We were talking about how reframing, some of our sense of responsibility and trying to slip self-care or self-compassion into it, and recognizing that even um,
Mhm.
small minor acts can help you reconnect with pieces of yourself. I mean, this conversation, we could go into lots of different paths on caregiving, but this specific conversation is about the whole of you balancing identity. And I remember in an earlier conversation you had mentioned that you didn't even know who that would be now, not caring, because you've been doing it so long. So, a lot of caregivers after the caring process have completely lost connection with what makes them happy, what do they like to do, what is their life rhythms like, and have to find their way back to that. So this conversation is really about, can a caregiver find a way to have a dual awareness while caring, so that their own self needs and identity don't get completely lost in the process. And it's a challenge, as we know, because as Debbie said, the mission sometimes outweighs anything we might be thinking about ourselves. But that doesn't come without a cost. And so we're looking at how do we possibly enter this and become aware. So maybe it is taking a few moments to yourself, and it might not be the 4-hour massage and run that you might want to take, but it might be finding other ways to identify ways to connect with yourself.
What's your name?
So what are you able to explore some of that, or do you feel that?
Yeah. I think that, yes, you have to fight for putting aside time or playing, like you said, like not the 4-hour massage, but maybe just the 30-minute one, or 10 minutes of tennis then rather than an hour, or just you get up earlier, or you go to bed late, or you do yoga in the middle of the night, or you can do all of those things, but you also, it does have to, I think, because I think especially with dementia, I think especially where Debbie and I happen to be, which I think a lot of people are probably in our similar circumstance or whatever, you're sort of an extension of them. And so I sort of spoke to this earlier. It's that I feel like I'm here to be her personal valet, or her I'm here for her, sort of all of her identities are kind of important to me, and I'm trying as her caregiver to hold all the pieces of this particular someone's identity and dignity together, right? All the while, I think in my heart and deep in my psyche is that I'm losing all of the pieces and different little identities that I'm that feed me or make up my essence or whatever. And so that's kind of very strange, because I do feel like I am, if I do anything to sort of tip that Richter scale, I'm tempting fate. I'm Debbie said that before to me. I thought that was a great line. Or just like you have all these you want to do such a good job for whoever your person that you're caring for is, that you just feel you don't want to put them at in any risk, even though it's not risky to get up at 2 o'clock in the morning and do a yoga class. That still can feel sometimes like that I'm somehow moving further away from her. It's hard. I think it's very hard to really, really, really hold on to who you are, but you just kind of have to like fight through it, and you have to have the confidences, and you just get hour by hour.
Yeah, well, to sustain your identity under any circumstance, it's essential to recognize that caregiving is just one role in your life. It isn't your entire identity, even though it might take up the entirety of your time. As Debbie was saying, she's exhausted. She has no time. But it is not your entire identity, even though it feels that way. So reinterpreting self-care, and identity in terms that you can actually work with, it means you have to find a way to balance awareness of your loved one's needs with the awareness of your own, and recognize when your body needs that break and honor that, even if it's just for a moment. And that's really hard, obviously, when you're exhausted and you are sleep deprived. I'm sure there are many listening in that are not caring for a parent. Many of you are caring for a spouse. Maybe that relationship was not in the best of shape when that person's health started to decline. There's space there for resentment and anger and frustration, because you want to do the right thing and you want to care for that person, but at the same time did not make any kind of agreement that you would give up your well-being, mental health, physical health, and identity to keep someone else comfortable. So again, there's always a lot of complexity involved when caring for someone that you're related to or married to or feel obligated to in some way. Uh, the concern about sleep deprivation in any situation, whether you're a parent or a caregiver, is that is not sustainable. Not only is it unhealthy for you at some point, but also for the person you're caring for. So again, we're here just to examine how to help you regain some sense of self and strength so that you can continue to do what you're doing, but also so you can remain connected to yourself. Let's go to the next slide. So asking for help is not in most people's vocabulary. Most people are not good at it. But these are things that happen to caregivers a lot. And these are some very simple ways that we researched this, we did some surveys, and we found that these are some ways to be able to ask for help, whether it's to family members, to faith-based organizations you might be connected with, neighbors, friends of the person you're caring for. But if you don't have enough times during the week, it might be simply asking someone to stop by to keep your loved one company while you take a nap, while you take a shower, while you do something for yourself. That yoga class, that meditation. I know we mostly want to fill it up with grocery shopping and other errands, but asking for help, surprisingly, most people do not step up to help. And the number one reason why is they don't know what to do and no one ever asked them. So asking, I could use some support, be very specific. Maybe you ask somebody else that maybe you don't trust them to stay with your loved one, but they could run a few errands for you. Maybe it's picking up the food or, taking the dog to the vet, whatever that might be. Let them know it means something to you and see if you can't use that time that you would be doing that to do something for yourself. Maybe it's asking a friend to check in with you, creating and keeping that social connection. Even a very small support system can be very important for you. Even if it's them sending you a text, hang in there, I'm thinking about you. You cannot underestimate what having a support system can mean to you. So no, they can't sleep for you and they can't do some of the things that you need to do, but knowing you have that in your life is important. What we hear repeatedly from caregivers is their social connections fall off. They are isolated. They are lonely. People don't understand what they're going through. They stop reaching out. That isolates you further. So if you are at the beginning of your caregiving process, keep your social connections alive. Even if you can't get together because of time commitments, a phone call, a text, an email, a card, whatever it is, keep connected. If you're already in that place where you're feeling isolated and that you've fallen away, pick up the phone, reestablish some of them. It's hard. You don't have to convey everything you're going through. You can let them know, I'm having a hard time. I have very little free time. Please understand, you still mean a lot to me. And I'd love for you to check in with me. If you trust someone to ask them to sit with your loved one on occasion, use that time again for yourself. And then again, you might simply want to ask your friends, I don't have a lot of time for breaks. Could you come over and have coffee with me? Can you come by and visit me? Pick up some food. Let's eat together. So these are just simple statements that you could use to the people in your life, to the organizations, coworkers, whatever, to perhaps buy yourself a little social connection, a little connection to the identity that you had prior to caregiving. You are still that person. Debbie and Allison, as you read these, is there any one of them that you think you could do? I mean, just as a little challenge to maybe buy yourself a little a little reprieve or a little connection to someone that you haven't seen in a while? Allison, I saw you smile. Maybe you had a thought there.
Yes, my thought is awfully pessimistic. It's it I think that every single one of these are so brilliant and so just eloquently simply put, that I would love to think that you know, they would be able to be, I don't know, executed. Um, no, all of them terrify me. But you know, yeah.
Change is terrifying, and you've been doing what you've been doing for a long time. But simply think about the alternative. Not doing it, not reaching out, what you end up with. How about you, Debbie? Can you pick one?
Well, I mean, I have asked friends to come over
Good.
and just hang out with me. My mom's medical situation is a little bit unique in that she has dysphagia on top of everything else, which it resulted from radiation she had to the brain, which caused her dementia. But we had 2 choking incidents in June where we called 911. Her oxygen she was gone. They're convinced she was gone for a little bit. So I can't leave her side. I can't go outside or go in the other room and get on the treadmill because then I won't be able to hear her.
Your
So
situation's very unique. Yeah, you would need
Pardon me?
your daughter. Your situation's very unique. You would need your daughter, someone else to sit with that person.
She needs all eyes on her. And so it's a definitely a situation. I don't have anybody looking at her now. I can hear her if she starts to cough, but we really need to keep our eyes on her at all times. So I will have friends, come over.
Good. I'm sure there are people listening that do not have quite the same situation where they
Right.
may be able to do that. So I'm going to ask all of you who are listening and who are listening to this recording to read these. I mean, there are 4 or 5 statements here. Even though it would be uncomfortable, I challenge you to pick 1 or 2 and practice saying it to yourself and then pick up the phone. And again, there is no like, this is a good way, that's a bad way. It is not, this is good, this is bad. It's a very gray area. We have to find the small moments of joy where we can. And, if you are never able to ask for help, there will be very limited time for you to maintain any sense of connection to who you were prior to that. And again, I keep coming back to that because this is the title of this conversation. But let's go to the next slide. So, again, your situation, Debbie, is unique. Allison, you may have a little bit more movement, but if you are unable to get out, just finding joy in the little things. And these are some practical self-care strategies. We talked about it a little bit. They do not have to cost anything. They do not have to require a lot of time. Simply 5 minutes a day to learn deep breathing exercises or meditate, sitting in silence, can help get you through some of the most difficult days, or they can lighten the difficult days. These obviously are suggestions for people who are capable of getting out a little bit, whether it's for a short walk or even a creative expression. If you used to have a hobby you love, journaling, drawing, knitting, music, dance, whatever that might be, if you can do even a little bit about it, even talking about it with someone has been known to be good for your soul. But I focus on the last one most importantly: social connection, calling a friend or having them meet you for coffee, coming to you. Maintaining social bonds is critical to keeping your own identity alive. So for those of you, again, who are new to this or who have been doing it for a while, if you've fallen away from your friends or your support group, coworkers, whoever that might be, reestablishing that connection can be one of the most powerful things you can do to reconnect with your identity. And if you haven't yet fallen away, this is the best way to stay connected with the sense of self. Let's go to the next slide. So again, self-care can take many forms. It, to some people it's exercise. Others it might simply be sitting in the garden, watering their plants. Others find friends. We could go on with a whole list here, which I'm going to ask those of you who are at home to do. List everything that you can think of that would reflect or represent self-care to you or self-compassion, and put them in categories, what you can do every day. Maybe that's journal, maybe that's, deep breathing exercises, those that you need or require a little pre-thought. You might need to do it when the person is napping or when someone is there helping, and then the social connection. But without thinking about them or having some kind of plan, it's hard to let any of them come to fruition. And so, again, you don't have to say, oh, an exercise class or a yoga class or a massage. Self-care, that might be self-care for one person. For you, it might be sitting in silence, reading a magazine from cover to cover. So identify what that means to you, and make the room every day, even if it's just for a few minutes. Those small moments, those small actions can add up. So let's go to the next slide. So this whole thing's been about sustainable caregiving. This is people who are caring for someone. It's ongoing. And again, we're talking about dual awareness for yourself. So giving yourself grace is one of the first, things. It's not always going to work out as you planned. It's not always going to feel guilt-free or feel great. But as you wallow or stay in that guilt or ruminate about guilt, it's only going to add to your already very difficult tasks. So when this says practice gratitude, a big part of it is for your own efforts. Be thankful for what you've been able to do. Remind yourself that you did what you could. And again, think about the sustainable component of it. Sustainable caregiving isn't just about surviving this journey. It's about creating balance so that both you and your loved one can thrive. Finding a rhythm that allows you to honor your own identity alongside of the well-being of the person in that caregiving role. So, again, building routines and respect, evolving around both requires a lot of patience, and we don't always have that. And especially when we're sleep deprived and don't know when we're going to get a good night's sleep. But again, these are all aspirational. It's easy to say this is too difficult, I can't do it, I have too much on my plate. But again, living in that space is going to create that desensitization and possibly caregiver burnout and depression, which is, that's what this whole conversation is about, trying to help you maintain a sense of self so you don't find yourself sick as well. Let's go to the next slide. So, what's one way that you might incorporate some balancing identity into your own life? So we're going to hear from Debbie and from Allison on how they're incorporating some more balance and identity into their own life. And then you can write into the chat, and we'd love to hear from you who are listening as well. But Allison, do you want to go first?
Yes. Oh, what's one way I might incorporate balancing identity into my life?
Mhm.
I think just making sure that, like, things I'm passionate about that I'm doing, maybe not in the same capacity, whether it could be writing, photography, it could just be, if I like watching films, or just making sure I'm doing some of those, um, would, I think, qualify for that.
I think so too. I think so too. Do you feel like you might have guilt about that, or do you think that's something that you could even find a little bit of an excitement for yourself for?
Um, I have definitely gotten away with some things where I have felt like very excited because, the world didn't crumble and she didn't leave me, and so that was a win, right? So I was like, oh, I was able to, write a
Mhm.
page, or I was able to, have a phone call, or I got that business thing done. And so I think, that's important, is just sort of, you know, giving yourself soothing, giving yourself that compassion on the way, for
Mhm.
whatever little tiny things that you're doing. It's it's just very hard, and I'm assuming that a lot of people perhaps on the call are, deal with dementia, and I think that, and maybe not, and everybody, comes to caregiving with at various different, points. Um, but this is a big one, and if you don't sort of, um, kind of curate and, keep those identities, um, you're going to be a better caregiver, I think, if you just at least do a little bit. And quite frankly, and I think with what I was going to say with dementia is that, as much as she's cognitive, and as much as, I'm able to discuss so much with her, there's things that I can't discuss. And so I kind of have to just know that she wants all of that for me, right? So she wants the big, um, deal of everything that I want. And so that has given me some sense of peace, of like, okay, like she would want me to be, doing X, Y, and Z. And it's just a balance of making sure that, things that she's wanting to do and things that I'm wanting to do, that we're sort of doing it in some crazy orbit together. um,
Yeah. Yeah. You said something really cool there, which is, she would want the best for you. She would not want to know that you were losing all sense of yourself and
mm,
identity and falling into a depression. I don't think anybody that loves us wants to have that. And so, in a way of honoring yourself, you're honoring them too. Um, and how does it feel when you do that? Do you feel more invigorated, or does it help you build resilience?
yes, I think with how intense our life is, and it's probably nowhere near as intense, or, as other people in different care situations or whatever, but for us, I feel like, um, it's intense. So therefore, when those wins and those like moments come up, I think is what you're getting at. Like, am I happy about them? Is that what you said, Maureen? I didn't quite catch the
Do you
ending.
do you feel that when you take that moment, whether it's 5 minutes or 20 minutes or an hour for yourself, does it help fill your cup a little bit so that you can go back and be a more resilient or present caregiver?
Yes. And when I feel like I'm doing things of a similar nature, but that are more geared towards her as well, I get the same sort of, it's like the same sort of rush of feeling like, okay, like, we did that for her and we did this for me. And, you're not really calculating it like that per se, but it's certainly there. Yeah.
That sounds like a dual awareness, what we were talking about. You're aware that this is good for me and that'll ultimately impact her, and then doing something that's good for her will ultimately impact you. So I
Yes.
applaud that. And
Like, I, I'm just going to interrupt you really quickly. Like I try to get her to do little weight trainings, and that's good for me, right? So I'm making her
Yes,
weight train. So
yes.
I make it a challenge to see how much weight training will she do with me. Or I feel like the last 4 years, I mean, I have been giving my grandmother a personal lap dance. So I feel like, like I'm dancing in front of her, and I didn't even realize this. I was like, this is crazy. Like I have been this private one woman show for her for 4 years, and I try to get her up to do all these dances and songs. And if we get through that, where I have felt like, she's, you know, done some of her numbers and I've done a couple of mine, I feel like, yeah, like I'm ready for the rest of the night. Like I can,
For anyone
yeah.
listening, by the way, the Caregiver Chronicles are full of amazing stories, like Allison just shared. Entertaining her grandmother, being a one-woman show. Many of you are the sole person that the person you're caring for sees and talks to. So that's a huge responsibility. And I love the fact that you've found some humor in that and are seeing the positive side of that, because it again, caregiving is, you still are you still have an identity in there, but it can get lost in the weeds, in the activities, the responsibilities, the appointments, the food, the medications. And Debbie, you're definitely in a different situation than most, but do you think that there's any way, again, just for the sake of this conversation, that you could incorporate something to help balance your identity? I love that your friends come over, but you're more restricted. But is there anything here that you think that we could help you with, or that you think might be effective for you?
Well, without sounding gross, I mean, there are some times where I've gone a week without taking a shower and washing my hair, which is so bizarre for me because every day I would take a shower and wash my hair and um oh shoot. Um and put my makeup on. And the last 2 days I've been able to take a shower and wash my hair and put my makeup on. And it felt so good. Um so
That little act.
yeah. And it does feel really good. And um so but I also feel rewarded when I'm doing things with my mother and she's responding positively, and that makes me
Mm-hmm.
feel good. That's an energy that I'm proud of, and it makes me happy. And so that's able to elevate me to get to the next
Mm-hmm.
task, if you will.
Got it. Got it. That feedback, that loop. Well, for anybody who's listening, I ask you to think of what's one way you might incorporate balancing identity into your life, and think about that. If you don't have the answer right now, make a list of ideas and start exploring which things that you can do. Again, we're not talking about taking a 4-hour excursion out to a spa day. We're talking about finding these moments of joy, of connection, of exploration, whatever that might mean to you. And that's different for everybody. So, yeah, write it in the chat, share it with us. I know at the end we'll examine some of them. Go ahead, Allison. Yes. Were you raising your hand?
Yeah, yes. I just wanted to say in regards to the book that was this, incredible collaboration of authors, that just
Amazing book
start
right here.
this
Yeah.
the start to finish of it was just, I mean, the growth, I'm sure, with, I know, I wasn't obviously in everyone's home, all these different authors, but I know that everyone was having, a tough time, or an easy time, or a beautiful time, or joy. Like all of us were meeting it at different stages, and it was just really incredible. And so I think it showed me like, oh, you can actually accomplish something and the whole world didn't fall apart because you wrote a chapter in a book. Um, and then I just, I fell in love with the process, and Paulina made me fall in love with it. And, she's just an insane editor, and she just held all of us in her hands in such a way that probably made us all feel so incredibly, special, and within our own, wherever we were at caregiving wise. And it was just beautiful. And I think that just having it on my bedside, and knowing, I don't think you have to know any of us to pick it up and read a chapter and just be like, oh wow, like this is my story. It's like picking up, you know, a book on, motherless mothers or motherless daughters, and relating to someone that's up in, Maine, and you just relate. And so I feel like I didn't know everybody, and I certainly didn't know their chapters. And to have that book on my bedside, it's just such a balm. It's just like knowing like, oh, I can go there and just open up to that chapter and just spend time with that person. And I just felt like everybody's words just leapt off the page. And
You said something so important, Allison, was you found
really
community.
nice.
Yeah,
I found
you
what?
found fellowship, fellowship and community on those pages. And what I want to tell a lot of you who cannot get out, there are groups, there are online groups, there are ways to connect, and simply connecting with other people that are going through what you're going through, having people know what your experiences are, can do a lot for your identity. They remind
It
you
also
that you are
was,
more than just a caregiver.
it was also not an easy journey. So I think that if there's people that are listening to us right now on this call, like the things that they choose, things that everybody chooses to go and do, it might feel, you might be like, oh yeah, I used to horseback ride and it was so comfortable and my most favorite thing. Well, now you might come to it and it might be a whole heck of a lot more uncomfortable. And Paulina will speak to, can speak to this. She met people at all different various points, and it was difficult for everybody, I think, in different, various ways. It was really uncomfortable. But I mean, and there's so many things going on behind the scenes, but you're just being pushed. It was like, oh, my computer slipped off the bed and the entire screen is now gone and I have a deadline, or, and I had to have a friend in the Bay Area help me, mainly just help with my mental health, because I felt like it was probably way more extreme than if I wasn't a caregiver and exhausted like Debbie and I are at 24/7. And so you just kind of have to, just take it as it comes.
Well, you discovered something through that process that you didn't know that you could do, that seemed to help not only help you connect with your identity, but possibly even find a part of your identity you didn't know you enjoyed so much. But the act of doing this together and being part of a collective, I highly encourage those of you who are listening in to find and join an online support group if you cannot go in person. The community, the fellowship, the understanding that you will receive. You'll learn from each other on what, how people handled certain circumstances, but even beyond that, you'll have a social opportunity to be with people who understand what you're going through. And I have two groups that I run at the Motion Picture Television Fund, for the industry members that are related to that. And these people have never met in person, but have created bonds that will, I'm sure, last a lifetime. Caregiving is a very specific period of most people's life. It's not a forever, situation, but it's profound and it impacts, the way we see the world. So having people that you can connect with is a gift you can give to yourself. And there's many free ones out there, and just do a little exploration and see if that's something that interests you. Let's see, we have a couple more slides. So, the key takeaways here really is that no matter what it feels like right now, no matter what your day-to-day activities are, you are not just a caregiver. You are a whole person, and you have the right, to take care of yourself. And it's not just a right, it's really a responsibility. Um, Even though it's easy to lose yourself, you don't have to. Think about that dual awareness and balance your care with their care. Um, Not just because you need to stay alive to keep taking care of them, but you're worthy of that care too. And, guilt, anger, frustration, confusion, those are all natural. They come up, they come and go, but find a way to put them in their place and to keep finding moments of joy that will help you be connected to your own needs. And I cannot stress this enough. Social connection is critical to your own health. And that social connection can be found in a caregiver support or social group. It can be found in a faith-based community. It can be found by having a neighbor that checks in on you, or a sibling across the country that sends texts now and then giving you encouragement. It does not have to be, a time-consuming situation. It's simply allowing people into your life and staying connected with them. So I think what's one more slide, I think, and then I think that might be, oh no, so we're ready for our questions. And Paulina, I know you popped in, so you must have some things to add to this.
Oh gosh, I have just been listening and loving this whole conversation. I so appreciate Deb and Allison for having the courage really to share their stories, not just in the book, right, but here live. What I will say too is, you, Maureen, this concept of how how powerful social connection is, right? I so for myself, um just to share a really quick story, I was primary family caregiver to both a mother and my younger sister, both of whom were diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. And
Mm-hmm.
I I had I had isolated myself, where all I did was go to work and nobody knew at work what was going on, and then
Mm-hmm.
come home and, you know, braced whatever was going on, right? Depending on who was on their meds, what point they were at, what had happened during the day. One day at work, and I was a journalist. I'm at the newspaper, and someone from the team, I obviously we had gotten along, but I had never gone out with anyone after work because my job was caregiver and the breadwinner. I was bringing home the paycheck to pay for everything. This one
Mm-hmm.
day, Sylvia says to me, "Hey, do you want to go and get a drink? I feel like getting a drink." And even though I knew I needed to get my behind home to take care of things because I didn't know what I was walking into, something in me had gotten to the point where I couldn't do it anymore. And I could have cared, and this is maybe horrible to say, but I could have cared less what was going on at home at that point. All I knew was that something in me said, "You need to take a minute for you." And I said yes. Now, the interesting part of this story is Sylvia and I go to I don't even remember where we ended up, but someplace. We're sitting there, and she just kind of said to me, "So, what's going on in your life?" kind of thing. And for the first time, I shared what was really going on without a thought of what this other person might think, without a thought of what was going on. Only it was so primary to me to think of only me in that moment for whatever reason. And you know what ended up happening? As I was sharing all the cray cray in my life that I had kept hidden, all of a sudden Sylvia's eyes just got so big and she was like, "Oh my God, Paulina, I have to tell you, that's my life too. I'm dealing with that as well." It was so serendipitous that the two of us found one another and were able to take that kind of those few moments, right? Share a drink and when you talk about the connection, about finding that support, we do not know where it's going to come from, but I can
Mm-hmm.
guarantee you, if you don't reach out, you will never get it, right? That's
Never.
something key that I found. And here at LACRC, we have so many support groups that
Mm-hmm.
really tie in with whatever it is that your particular situation is about, right? So if it's a spouse, if you are someone from a Hispanic kind of culture, right? Um, those support groups are put in place and they're all confidential, and you do need to be one of our clients. But the beauty of it is, we often think that we're the only ones kind of going through this stuff, and nobody
Mm-hmm.
else will understand unless they're walking in our shoes. Well, I 100% agree. They won't. They really won't. They can try, right? They can do their best, but finding people who are in similar situations, taking, even hopping on a call for 10-15 minutes, it really alleviates. I know Deb and Allison know that one of my big things is, you got to vomit it out. Anytime you try to
Mm-hmm.
stuff this stuff down and just handle it on your own, you will suffocate, you will drown, right? And so another big thing is actually, and this is something I've even been practicing even to this day, practice disappointing other people. So often we think that, right? I mean, so often we think that, hey, if
Mm-hmm.
I don't show up, the world's going to blow up, right? And in several cases that is true, right? You can't leave, Deb and Allison can't leave their care
Mm-hmm.
recipients alone. However, at times we adopt this persona of only being a caregiver. That is your role outside of just this one person, right? And and practicing disappointing others really is empowering, because at least in my case, what I learned is that I'm not all that in a bag of chips. There are other people who can shore things up, right? And the more that I practiced this, the more I realized that others were like, oh, you know what? Okay, I can come and do that, or I can take care of that, right? But unless you put it out there, unless you ask for help, unless you share your stories, then you run the risk of burnout and worse, right? So
Paulina, can I just add that some of the groups you're talking about, a lot of the attendees didn't share right away or for quite a while, but then I thought, oh, they're not interested, or maybe this isn't for them. You never really know what someone's thinking. But when surveyed or follow up, they'd say, I listened and learned so much, and I felt so safe in this group because I could relate to what every single person was saying. So they weren't ready to share their story, or they weren't ready. Some of them hadn't even really figured out what their story was because it was still kind of unfolding, but they recognized that they were with people who were going through similar experiences, and that gave them the sense that I'm not alone. This isn't just happening to me. This isn't just happening to my family. This is happening all over the world. I mean, so people are aging, they're living longer, and we often are the ones, families are the ones that are taking care of them without training, without support, without guidelines or bumper rails. And many of you are still trying to make a living and raise children at the same time. So these groups, LACRC is amazing, and join one, see if you fit in, see if you enjoy listening. You will learn, but you will find fellowship there. That is for sure. You will find fellowship. And what you were talking about, Paulina, was I was kind of getting at a little bit when you were at that risk of, that detachment where you get to this place where you don't care about yourself, and sometimes you get to the place where you don't care about your duties or responsibility. You just have no feeling at all because you went so far into, you were on freeze. That's not sustainable. And that's dangerous. It's dangerous for you. It's dangerous for the person you're caring for. And again, obviously, this does not apply to anyone on this call, but, elder abuse is more often family members, caregivers, And it's because of the exhaustion, the sleep deprivation, the depression. And so, we have to care for the caregivers too. We care about you. We recognize this is a very complex situation you're in without a whole lot of training and support. And it's impossible to do this indefinitely without, again, connection and fellowship. So I'm very, LACRC was there for me, and that was many, many years ago. And I hope those of you on the call take advantage of the many services and support groups that they have. And, events like this, the conversations, getting to hear from Debbie and Allison and their stories. You can see it's not easy for them. There's no answer like, oh, Debbie, go take a walk, or Allison, go take a yoga class, you'll feel better. It isn't that easy. And we recognize that. But it doesn't mean you shouldn't still keep trying to find ways to, make time for yourself, whether it's 5 minutes or, 5 seconds. But you are important, and there are people that can help you.
I think Deb wants to share.
Yeah. I would like to, I feel emotional about this, but I'm so incredibly grateful to Paulina and to Allison, because if it wasn't for them in this group, I feel like they've saved me. They don't know it, but they have saved me, because this community, it's more than just a safe place to talk to and to be with people who are relatable. I think our friends that we have in our lives are compassionate and they love us and they're caring, but if they're not in this situation, they don't. It's a different language. They don't get it. They make suggestions and they mean well, but it's difficult because they feel rejected, I think, at your suggestions of, you should do this, you should do that, or go do that, unless they're in this sandbox, they're in the trenches, they have no idea. And I know that their suggestions mean well. They definitely mean well,
Yeah,
but they don't get it.
You can't get it
if it wasn't for, pardon me?
I said it's hard for someone who's never been there to get it, and that's why what you said,
Correct.
it's
And
so
so
important to have
this
a
group,
community. It does.
so in terms of like my needs, I like this group answered needs for me that I didn't know needed filling. So I think that it is so important for people who are in this situation to look. Again, I'm sure their friends can be supportive to an extent, but you need this fraternal community to, this sisterhood and this brotherhood, who have been there, who know, who understand. It's just a different language.
Debbie, you just highlighted exactly what I meant and was trying to get across, is these groups. People think, oh, I don't want to talk to a group of strangers. I don't want to share my, people start off feeling that way. But what you said is speaking to people who've been there. Like when Paulina and I first spoke, hearing her story and her hearing my story, we immediately had a language that we could speak to each other. And you don't have to say a lot more after that. The community, the support you feel, and knowing that you can express yourself and people understand you is one strong step to maintaining your identity. I'm so glad you have this group and found this group, and I hope that others that haven't yet found a group will take the time to explore and find one, because it might be the very essence that carries you through and keeps you resilient while you're, maintaining
It's
equilibrium.
it's 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 really life-saving for your mental health. You cannot do this alone. And you don't realize that until you find a group. And you need to, it doesn't matter what the group is or where they're located or how you meet them, or you need to find a group. You need to be in with other people who they might not have the same challenges as you,
Mhm.
but there's a common denominator
Mhm.
of relating to whatever it is, and that's so important. And so I really hope people, if they're not in a group, that they find that group. It's just so, it's, you don't realize how important it is until you found them. It's
Mhm.
like not realizing that you've needed something for so long until it happens.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. Absolutely. And you have no idea what you'll learn, and you have no idea what people will learn from you, by sharing. Someone once said, family and friends do mean well, and neighbors, and they will say, "Have you tried this? Have you tried that? Or you should do this, you should do that." And caregivers will often say, it's so hard because you appreciate the interest and the kindness, but they're not speaking the same language, and these groups do. So I highly recommend anyone listening to find a place and to explore LACRCs.
And we actually have a question or two. So I'm going to ask, this person shared, I am an introvert, and the thought of sharing my concerns with a group of strangers strikes fear in my heart. How do other introverts cope?
Mm.
Great question.
Um, Yeah, and so I've had now dozens and dozens of people come through our groups, and the first thing is you don't have to share. You really don't. This is not a requirement. Um, I think what the first step is to show up. Just show up, meet the group. You meet people like Debbie and Allison. You meet other individuals who are sharing. And through that process, you recognize that you have commonality. You might want to ask them a question. You'll see the openness that they have in sharing. And what eventually usually happens is you start to recognize, I found my people. This is these are my troop. I can talk to them about anything. And you simply don't have to elaborate. You could ask a question, and over time, they'll get to know who you are, and you'll feel safer asking questions. That's what I would say is take the first step, find a group, and, allow yourself to listen and absorb, and you'll see.
That's great. Debbie, Allison, do you have any
I
suggestions?
think I would also say to them to try to take the mask off so that they're not feeling judged.
Mm.
Nobody's judging at all.
Mm-mm.
Hmm. That's a good one.
Pauline, I'm going to just give a little quick thing. I once was doing a session, and I do it. I do a couple times a week, and someone showed up at the wrong session, and we just let him stay. And that person was sharing something very intense. I mean, very intense. That in any group you would think, oh my gosh, this is challenging. The next day, I got a call from this man, and he goes, "I want to talk to you about what that woman was saying." And I thought, oh no, like, are we going to have to go to HR? I mean, it was that intense. And he said, I have never felt so seen in my life as when she was talking. She said exactly what I've been feeling for the last 2 years, and I've never articulated it to anyone because I was so afraid of being judged. And he said, hearing her say those words set me free. So you never know what you're going to experience in one of these groups. So be open. As Debbie said, take the mask off. No one is judging you. They've got their hands and plates full. They don't have time to do any judging. So, you know, dip your toe in and allow yourself to experience what it really is.
Uh, oh, I thought Allison was saying something. So, another question: how can we deal with the loss of who you used to be?
So that's an interesting, the way you said that question is interesting. I thought for a minute you might say dealing with the loss of who the person you were caring for used to be, because a lot of caregivers are giving full-time care and grieving the loss of the loved one who is kind of no longer in there, at least to their expectation. But what people don't talk about a lot is what this person asked in this question is the loss of your own identity. And that's what we were trying to discuss here. For people who haven't felt they've lost it yet, we talked a lot about dual awareness and finding the joy. But if you have already felt like you're so far removed from it, it almost feels like you're crawling your way back. So my suggestions would be to start with, again, just self-compassion first, forgiving yourself. You know, sometimes good has to be good enough. You have to recognize when you've reached your limits, and then to slowly start exploring some of the things that used to bring you joy. And don't be surprised if they don't anymore. If it was reading or knitting or music, and if you can't really find yourself in that, be okay with that right away. But don't stop trying. Social connections, again, are one of the best ways because your friends will remind you who you are. They'll remind you who you used to be. And you're still in there. That's still there. It's just buried. So I would say the first thing would be to reach out to a friend that you trust, someone that knew you before the caregiving experience, and find, maybe it's a weekly conversation or a couple of short phone calls during the week, but touchstones. That's the first step. And post caregiving, it is a thing. People who do end up losing the people they were caring for due to, death and whatnot, sometimes do not know how to get back to themselves. Give yourself the grace of time and breathe and start exploring once again. And do not get too disappointed if at first what used to make you excited is no longer having the same impact. But don't give up. Exploration and patience and grace. But if you are in the middle of the journey and you don't have the time, the first thing I would do would say reconnect with a friend who knew you before, because that person is still in there. They just haven't had the freedom or the expansiveness to show themselves.
Yeah.
I know it's crazy, but for me, it's the last few days. It's been something as simple as doing what I used to do before pre-caregiving. Get up in the morning, take a shower, wash my hair, put my makeup on. I'm bringing back my old routines. That
Mm.
it's a little thing, but it's monumental.
Impactful, Debbie. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, those little things
Whatever
add
makes
up,
you, yeah,
right?
whatever makes you feel like you,
Mhm.
and um, little steps, baby steps can have a huge impact.
Mhm. Yeah. And I'm going to say, Maureen, you had said you had talked about recognizing when you've reached your limits, right?
Mm,
And so I want to share another tiny little story because it also hooks on to something that was said earlier. In my case, um, you had mentioned elder abuse. My burnout was so severe that I I I couldn't see a way out other than ways that would have been
mhm.
pretty permanent in terms of out. Um,
Yeah.
in order to save myself, I had become a danger to myself as well as to them. And in
Yeah.
order to save myself and them, I realized I needed to get myself out. I just needed
Mhm.
to leave. And
Mhm.
when I did, what was interesting to me, there was a moment, I had left everything with nothing to come from Chicago to LA. When I got here, ironically, I became the caregiver for a woman who was 96 years old. And then there was the guilt of, here I'm caring for this lady who's not even my mom, but I left my mom and my sister back home, right? Um, but in all of this, there were moments where I just thought to myself, this isn't working out. I should just go home. I was a great caregiver, so to speak, right? I kept them alive. I had everything going on, right, until I started to lose myself. And
Mhm.
I thought I should go home. I had a phone call with my mother, who at that time happened to be stable on her meds. And I was the one crying and saying, I think I should just come home. I know you need me home, etc. And shock of shocks, my mother, fully expected her to say, yes, come home. Your place is here with us, right? I come from a Sicilian family. Every daughter should stay at home until she's married. And what does my mom say? No, 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 no. When I left Sicily and came to America, that's how it was. You wanted to go back, she said to me. She goes, but it's just the beginning. Just stick it out. Find what you love
Oh.
out there. Stay out there. I was shocked. And I bring this up because earlier we kind of talked about the other person and what they would even want for you. And I know as sure as I know my name that Deb, your mom, Allison, your grandma, right? Several folks on this call, whoever your care recipient or partner is, do you really think that this is what they want for you? For you to completely lose your identity, right? No, not at all, right? So when I think of this, I think of how this isn't a black and white thing. This isn't either I'm all in caregiver or not, right? There's
Mhm.
there's this messy kind of gray in the middle, and finding it, yeah, giving yourself that priority status allows you, yes, to be better for them, but in truth to be better for you. But it also gives them a gift back because they themselves are not, whether they realize it in whatever mental state they are in, they are never wanting to make it that they are your burden and stop you from living your life. I just can't believe that. So, and I can see from heads
Mhm.
nodding, right? We all know that to be true. So
Mhm.
sometimes having that in the back of your mind does make it easier to give yourself that time, to give yourself that priority and not feel irresponsible, right? Like you said, Deb, or guilty. So those are just things that came up while
Mhm.
while you all were talking. So
Well, Paulina, you brought up something about possibly self-harm. Um, I have had, caregivers in groups who, and again, if you have no resources and you don't have the income to hire help and you don't have family and friends and it's all on your shoulders, it sounds like, oh, I don't have any options. Well, I've heard someone say, I would go to bed at night and hope one of us would die, and I didn't care which one it was.
right,
That's dangerous. That's
yeah,
extremely dangerous. That is that depersonalization. That is where you risk potential abuse, either self harm or to the other person. It's not good for either one. And this is not sustainable. So again, if you are in that situation, please reach out to the CRC and get help. It is nothing to be ashamed of. Is you need support, reach out and find support. There are organizations, but you do have to, you have to make those calls. Caregiving, is again, whether it's for a parent or a spouse or a sibling, it's compounded with all kinds of things. We want our we want to do right by our parents, but the parents may not be in a place to be able to show you their appreciation. And that causes disappointment and frustration. There's all kinds of things going on in there. It doesn't matter. If you are feeling that you need support and help, please reach out. There is help out there. And again, you might be fine now. Caregiving has all kinds of valleys and highs, as you know. And if you find a rhythm that's working, that's amazing. But again, create a team, create a support system. That doesn't mean those are all people that come in and help you. It might be the person who sends you the text, the rah-rah text, or a phone call, or drops off coffee one day, or, brings you lunch, or whatever it is. Create a community because you need it. You cannot, as Debbie said, nobody can do this alone. And when they do, they could possibly find themselves in a situation as Paulina was, or this other person. And we don't want that either. We don't want to create two patients, So.
Yeah, great point. Great point. And we are coming up to the end here. So I want to make sure if there are any more questions, pop them into the chat so we can answer them. Deb, Allison, if there's anything else that you want to, as last thoughts, let's just kind of say, parting thoughts, or Maureen, let's do that now before we actually close out this incredible, very courageous and very insightful session.
I'll just reiterate that I just think that it's so important to be involved in a community, that you don't realize until you're in it how valuable and nurturing it is for your psyche, for your soul, to be able to put one foot in front of the other. It's so important. So I really hope that people who are listening, who are maybe looking for excuses or are afraid, just to go for it, because you will wonder why you didn't do it before. And it's like oxygen. You need it. And I just hope that nothing will stop anybody from becoming a part of this community.
Well said.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to Maureen and Paulina and to Debbie. This was really, really lovely. For comedy, I guess, to anyone that's been watching, I talk about identity. Again, this is extreme. It may or may not even relate to your case, but through this entire session, I've been on the clock, as Paulina, or I think Maureen had said, or whatever, and I'm talking and soothing a brain that needs me to the left or right of me here. And if I can, connect the dots to identity, it's trying to hold on to my own thoughts through this is such a challenge. And that's a part of identity. That's a part of just, just trying to, hold on for dear life. And you just have to keep,
I just go home when it's
fighting for that. And I just think that, Debbie is so correct in creating your orbit. And even if it's one or two people that are just super distinct, and most likely it's going to be somebody that's not necessarily your family or your best friend of 30 years, but it's going to be people that come to you that are going to be more dear and more of everything that you could possibly imagine. And you're just going to feel like, the luckiest person because you have them to maybe call at 3 a.m. the way you may, not
he's at home.
to someone else. So anyways, thank you so much for this panel and to everyone watching. And this was amazing.
I want to thank both you, Allison and Debbie, for sharing. You are both in the middle of this process, and taking the time out to spend with us. We really appreciate. I think you've helped a lot of people by sharing your story. There's probably a lot of people listening saying, I'm right there with you. I can relate. And thank you for being open and willing to.
Thank you all too. This was really incredible.
And Paulina for having this, and the LACRC for supporting caregivers, family caregivers, the way they do. They've been a staple in our community, and they are here for you. And if I left you with two words for takeaway, really, it's sustainable caregiving. It is not to do everything right. It is, as a parent, you can't have 3 square meals a day and teeth brushed every time and faces washed and hands washed. Sometimes you have to go, okay, do I wake them up to brush their teeth or let them sleep? Do they need to sleep? So as caregiving, we sometimes have to do the same thing too. I need this moment for myself. Maybe this is enough for now or good enough. And the other one is the dual awareness. Be aware of your needs. You may not be able to fulfill everything, but in small increments, even 5 minutes at a time, they add up and they will matter. The fact that you are recognizing that you have a need, mindful breathing, whatever that is, keep at it. And that will help you maintain some identity. So that sustainable caregiving and dual awareness while you're doing it can maybe be the permission that you have to put in a little more time for self-care as you're caring for someone else. And there are communities around you. Reach out. And as Debbie said, you won't be sorry. They will be with you probably in heart and soul for a long time.
Yeah, yeah. And I think one of the favorite things that I have heard here today is it's good enough, right? We're always so like these perfectionists, right? It's good
Mhm.
enough. I love that you brought that up. Thank you so much for this conversation. I want to also thank the people who hopped onto this call, the participants, those who asked questions.
Mhm.
You guys are great. If you have any more, please do let us know. We will be sending out replays along with other kind of resources that align with this topic of the art of balance, specifically identity. I also want to encourage everyone to go to the LA CRC website, Los Angeles CRC. You see it on the screen, .usc.edu. Sign up for the newsletter. Sign up to find out what's going on each month when we send it out. And if something, speaks to you, you can hop on, you can test it out, right? Also, we have all of these other sessions throughout November that pair experts with family caregiver author experts. And the next one is tomorrow, November 7th, from 3 to 5. And this one is all about finding flow, right? Is it all work and no play where you're at? You're going to want to come to this event. And this event is virtual. And it is one that is going to get you moving. We have a couple of experts on dance, on strength and conditioning, and the beauty of it is they're going to talk about actual take action strategies, right? Just like when Maureen was kind of saying, put your oxygen mask on first. That's really not necessarily so helpful. And I think this next session, you are going to find even more strategies on how to do that without it becoming so cliche. So put on your exercise suits for tomorrow, clear a path in your living room, join us. Make sure that you register. You will see there again the URL on where you can register to make sure you get the information. And also, finally, do not forget, if you want to win one of the free books, The Caregiver Chronicles, please do email your screenshot with what you posted on your social media to the email address that you see on the screen, lacrc-com@usc.edu. We'll put you in the drawing and you might just win a free book. So remember, you are not alone by a long shot. We are here at the Los Angeles Caregiver Resource Center for you. So let us know how we can help you in your caregiver journey. Until we see you again, on behalf of USC and the Los Angeles Family Caregiver Resource Center, I'm Paulina Milana, and I really thank you for joining us and hope to see you again soon. Bye-bye.